Okay, it's now 1:17 Eastern Time for our final panel. This is the CMMC AB panel, and it's moderated by Eric Crucis, and I'll turn it over to Eric now.
Great, thank you so much. Great to be here again. Well, we've heard a lot about CMMC so far today. We've heard about the ins and outs of it. One really critical piece of this puzzle, of course, is the accreditation board. And we're so lucky to have members of the accreditation board with us today. So before I go to questions, and I know folks have questions of them, and I've tried to work them into the questions we'll ask today, I want to give a little bit of background about them. I could really read all of their bios and do that, and it would take up the entire time we have allotted because they're all very accomplished. But so I cut them down and tried to hit some of the highlights of the members of the accreditation board. The first member who I'm going to be talking to is Ty Schreiber. He's the chair of the board. He currently serves as senior director of executive education for the University of Virginia, the Darden School Foundation. He's spent 32 years leading people, developing teams, delivering results in the private and public sectors. He works with industry. He's led large business operations of large, mid-tier, small, and startup companies providing cyber engineering technology services for federal, state, and local governments. He graduated from the Naval Academy in 1987. You could stop a bio right there, and that's a great accomplishment for the rest of your life with a BS in political science. He was selected service with the U.S. Marine Corps. He also has 2 graduate degrees from the Naval Postgraduate School, 2 master's degrees, a Master in Science and Systems Technology, and in National Security Affairs. Before I go to questioning Ty, I'm just going to introduce the rest of the board members who are joining us today. We have Carlton Johnson, who's the vice chair of the board. He's a senior executive with respected visionary leader with 32 years of subject matter experience in areas including cybersecurity and enterprise communications technologies. He's a decorated combat veteran and also served as the CIO for the Multinational Security Transition Command in Iraq. He retired from USAF active duty in 2014 as a colonel after 26 years of honorable service. And he's developed solutions that enable business transformation for multinational organizations and exercise strategic leadership in firms of up to 47,000 employees and led resource asset portfolios of up to $5.5 billion. And he's currently the chief executive officer of Delane Strategies Group. He also has a master's degree and executive graduate certifications from various institutions, including George Washington University, National Defense University, West Virginia University, and ISACA and the U.S. government. Also joining Ty and Carlton is Mark Berman. He's a board member and he's chair of the Communications Committee on the board. He's the CEO and founder of FutureFeed, which is a modern compliance platform focused on NIST and other compliance standards. Before FutureFeed, he was the co-founder of ThinkStack, which is a national MSP which continues to inspire and facilitate innovation in organizations ready for digital transformation and the demands of solid cybersecurity at every step. Prior to that, Mark led a national manufacturing firm, several successful political campaigns. I'm not going to ask him which ones today. And he was COO of a $1.2 billion wealth management firm. He graduated from the College of William & Mary with a degree in computer science and completed graduate work at NASA's Langley Research Center. He later completed an MBA at Loyola College. Joining her distinguished colleagues is Nicole Dean, finally, and certainly not least. She's the chair of the Infrastructure Committee on the board, also co-chair of the Nominations and Membership Committee. She is the CISO for Accenture Federal Services, where their goal is twofold. One is to protect Accenture's internal networks so they don't impact the mission of the company, and also to collaborate with their account leads by helping them securely implement the programs and keeping their clients' data secure. Prior to that, she was Global Chief Information Security Officer for Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, and she's held several federal positions as well. She's the director of the National Cybersecurity Division at DHS, as well as the National Cybersecurity Protection System Program Manager, which is known as Einstein. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in both liberal arts and technology and a master's degree in information system security from Colorado Technical University. Thank you all for joining us today. What a distinguished group, and really lucky to have you here today. And I'm going to start off with you, Ty, the chair of the board, as they say. I know a lot of things. There's been a lot of talk in industry about the memorandum of understanding that the board was negotiating with the Department of Defense, and I was wondering if you could provide an update of where that memorandum is and kind of what it means for the process that we're all going through right now.
Thank you, Eric. Delighted to be here and delighted to share the forum with colleagues from the AB. At long last, as of Monday this week, we finally have a signed memorandum of understanding with the Department of Defense. We're working to make this information available to the public in conjunction with our DoD partners, who right now are necessarily focused on the COVID-19 public crisis. The key impact for listeners or watchers are the AB now formally authorized, established, and implemented CMMC assessment, certification, training, and accreditation to help DoD achieve goals of improving cybersecurity across the defense supply chain. Thing two, the AB is the authoritative source. If the AB hasn't deemed your organization is certified, assessed, trained, etc., you aren't. And to be clear, there are no third-party entities that are certified CMMC assessments or any other services. So I think those are the two important things at this juncture. There's been an enormous amount of work to delay in the MOU. A lot has gone on by our board, collaboration with our DoD partner and their contractors, probably in evident to all stakeholders, and that'll unveil itself here as we go through my colleagues and their remarks. The point is that now that we do have a formal relationship with DoD, this effort is hitting a whole different gear of as we continue to expand the level of collaboration, both with DoD and across the industry, and multiple lines of effort that are related to implementing CMMC in support of the aggressive schedule we're all very well aware of. So that's, I think, an important update. I wanted to kind of, if I can, just give you a couple of other things to think about. You know, the current status of the AB. For those who haven't tuned into a prior conversation, the AB is incorporated as a nonprofit in the state of Maryland. Our application for tax exemption determination by IRS on Section 503 is in process. Our website is cmmcab.org. That's where you can get up-to-date and authoritative information on what exactly is going on with this process. We have a 15-member board of directors. We've got 7 committees. Each committee is led by a director, and we'll establish working groups that are focused on enabling critical stakeholder participation and input to help us in shape specific challenges and figure out how we implement the CMA standard. Working group now live, so more on that in a bit. We'll be creating some independent councils from academia, industry, and standards later in the spring. And the pace accelerates from here. I think it's also important to kind of understand our mindset as an organization. This really started as and remains a coalition of the willing. We're here to support and enable overarching CMMC, not just to make another certification program, but that actually enhances the cybersecurity posture of our nation. We're open to and actively exploring innovative ideas and approaches. Our focus is on how, not why can't we? And we'll look to leverage, harness, and harvest the existing elements of great work that's been done across this domain, other certification, accreditation standards, so that we can implement it effectively, efficiently, and expediently to get to the goal. Cost effective. We know cost is a concern and currently unknown. Many of us are small business as well, so this element certainly has our attention. And we're, as an independent entity, we've got organizational maneuver and agility as tools to get this done in a rapid frame. Real quick, 3 principal lines of effort, for us. There's a lot going on concurrently. The levels, the levels of effort is build a business, which is just one thing. We are a startup, but we're using the experience of our very accomplished and seasoned board to make sure that we do this in a mature fashion. We're 2 months into operations. We're a formal entity. We have our IN, our cage code. We've gotten a lot done in a really short amount of time, and we're also acutely aware of just how much we have to do. Optimize the relationship with DoD and the PMO. We haven't started collaborating, communicating with PMO since this process started back in November. And I think we'd agree with all of Katie and her entire team, an enormous gratitude for the heavy lift, exceptional work that they've done to put this vision in place. So now that we've got the relationship formalized, we need to operationalize it so that we remain fully committed going forward and move forward. Lastly, we have to define, develop, and implement CMMC standard, putting everything in place that's required for us to operate as an independent entity that manages and oversees all things associated with CMMC accreditation, certification, training, assessment processes, and all the pieces and parts of that in accordance with the CMMC model provided by DoD. Lastly, I think the core operational tenets in terms of our approach, 3 C's: collaborate. This is a team sport. We have want and need stakeholder input. So messages please engage in this process. Communication. There are so many questions still in so many facets that will impact stakeholders as this process is established and implemented. A lot of the concern is driven by the lack of information or misinformation. And we're working to turn those unknowns into knowns as quickly as possible and making sure that we get the information out as soon as it's available. And finally, clarify. A lot of conversation. Cybersecurity domain is both complex and complicated. The feedback that we've got as we've been in listen mode from the day one is that a lot of organizations subject to compliance are concerned about ensuring that we've got knowledgeable auditors do what they do in a standardized, repeatable experience. That's very important. And so we're looking to establish a baseline that is comprehensive and specific, and we're looking to create a common understanding in terms of how to do these things so that we reduce the room for interpretation and variance, and therefore frustration. Finally, making the information consumable. You've heard Katie's mouth is a target for crafting the assessment guide and other materials. We want to make sure we make anything that we consumable and understandable by whoever is involved. I'd just like to say, to everybody that's been involved in this process, it's been quite since November when we started down this road. It's amazing to me, how many just individuals across the DoD industry, the accreditation body, that really have come together, recognizing how important this is and have volunteered so much of themselves to put it in place. And the breadth, the depth, the diversity of skill, experience, and represented at the table thus far, and what we need going forward is really, really important. So we'll maintain that focus of listening and incorporation of stakeholder input to figure this all out in a real team model. So there's that. We keep on the path that we've been on so far in terms of teamwork and collaboration, able to get this done, and it'll be a very important, great thing for our whole country in the base.
Great, Tyler. What a wonderful overview, and we really appreciate it. I'm going to move on to Mark next. Before I do, Carlton and Nicole, consider possibly, if it's possible, dialing in and using their phone audio. That might help the audio quality that we have. I know Mark has already done that, but if it's too much trouble, don't worry about it. But if it's possible, go ahead. Mark, just coming along to you now. Ty kind of gave a really nice broad overview of all the things that the board is doing, and it's certainly a lot to take on at one time. But I understand that the board is looking for help among folks in the industry, and that form of the help is that form is in the working groups. And I was wondering if you could talk about what the working groups are, what the status is, and kind of what you're looking for volunteers for.
Sure. Thanks very much. So thank you, Ty. I do appreciate that overview. One of the things that Ty said during his overview is that we are an organization that is built to listen, and we took that very seriously as part of our core mission from the beginning. This is a huge endeavor. The DoD should be commended for recognizing the need and having sort of a world tour of education leading up to the point where we are right now. And we want to continue that listening. So a couple of things before I get into the working groups. One is that very soon on our website, if you have an event where you need to hear from, or you would like to hear from one of us, there'll be a place where you can make a submission and make a request. There is always a survey on our website. We've had, it would just change recently. So if you represent a C3PAO, which is an organization that will provide the assessments, we're looking for some input right now on what types of information do you need to consider when you're organizing an assessment engagement. So that question changes as soon as we get enough information, we'll change it to something else. On the working groups really came out of our pre-formation days. Before we were an accreditation body, we had some working groups that sort of figured out the basic foundation for what the accreditation body would one day become. So we've tried to create a continued ability to listen to the great ideas and the experiences that are out in industry and in government and in other places. So if you go to our website right now, or if you do after the meeting, cmmcab.org, that's our website, and /groups will take you to our working groups. Each of our working groups is led by a committee. So as Ty said, there are 7 committees. Not all of them have working groups yet. We're getting that effort underway right now. But what you'll find when you get there is, I believe there are 4 of them, maybe 5 of them, 2 or 3 more going up either tomorrow or at the beginning of next week. Let me just hit the highlights of what we have up there. The standards committee. So our standards committee is there to look at the model that the DoD released and take that model along with an assessment guide. So if you're trying to prepare to be responsive to CMMC, there is an assessment guide that will be coming at some point. It is not released yet, so you might want to be thoughtful about the efforts that you're putting in right now to make sure that when that assessment guide comes out, you have a better understanding. We're working and collaborating with the DoD on that assessment guide. So the standards committee is looking at taking that model and guide and translating it into something that the assessors can use when they're looking at each company across the country. That group is forming now, and our groups generally are going to have 8 to 10 members when they're task oriented like that, or an ongoing group. Each group may have a different cadence. Sometimes we want a broad amount of information to come in. Sometimes it's a more narrow focused group. That particular group is looking generally at the standards and what needs to be accomplished, and you can find that at the top of the page, and it's reviewing the materials that we've received to date and working on the assessment criteria and the training and learning objectives. So moving on to the accreditation and credentialing committee, they have 3 groups up right now looking for help on several topics, and again, I'll hit them at a high level. Accelerating the initial assessments. So one of the things that we're working with right now is the idea that while we would love to be able to do 300,000 different assessments all in the next few months and be up and running, the reality is this is going to be something that is deployed slowly over the next several years. But how can we get that first tranche of assessments done? What can we do about our process where we can learn from the first few assessments to inform the second group and the third group and so forth? So there's a group that's working on how can we qualify some very experienced assessors to provide those initial assessments so that we can learn from the experience and learn from them as experienced people in the industry. So apply to that group if you're interested. That final deliverable is April 15th. Most of these groups are going to be on a fairly short timeline. the assessment quality assurance group. So the next question that we need to solve, and we need your help, is how do we assure that somebody who is coming on site, who is representing a private C3PAO, is providing a quality assessment, collecting and looking at the right information, and doing what we need to do to evaluate whether a particular organization is meeting the requirements of CMMC. So that quality assurance oversight is extremely important to the accreditation body, and this group is going to work on how do we measure quality when you talk about something like doing an assessment and you're using people that are independent. In other words, the C3POs do not work directly for us. The assessors will work for the C3PO. What quality can we overlay and assure people that they have qualified and experienced assessors looking at the right information? The last group that I'll highlight that's out there right now is the assessment methodology working group. So there are many ways that you can approach an organization when an assessor walks in and they shake hands with you for the first time. What should they be doing? Should we be collecting information using technical means? How do we walk through an assessment? How do we ask questions? How do we collect information? How is that information distilled into findings at the end of an assessment? All of those things come together in an assessment methodology, and we're going to take several cracks at this. The first one is iteration 1, and there's a group that's working on that, again, with a work completion date in April. So we want to work on that. The cadence of all of this is going to produce an ecosystem that is trying experimentally using Pathfinder assessments over the next few months to develop a system that's going to work at scale. That system will be released as the regulations change in the fourth quarter at some point. That's all I have presentation-wise, so I'll pass the mic back over to the next person.
Great, thank you so much, Mark, and thank you for that background on the working groups. And I think it's important for folks to realize that this is not, while the board is, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but while the board is kind of driving the train here, the board is really open to suggestions from industry and wanting to work with industry and folks in the government to help bring this process forward and make it the best process that it could possibly be, and make it a standard, and have this experience be as seamless as it could be for contractors.
I will go one step further and say that we can't do it without you. So while we can, some of the working groups already are very oversubscribed, but there are going to be plenty of them, and we need you ultimately so that we can build this. We're building this with you, not for you. So we're going to use these working groups. We're going to engage, and we're not using this just to be informed or to get a pat on the back if we do something nice. We're doing this to build it together with you.
That's great, and that's very true. I'm going to just move on to Carlton really for a few minutes right now. Mark has described a lot that the AB is doing. Ty has described a really terrific overview of all the things the AB is doing. So there's a lot of tasks, a lot of things happening in a hurry. And granted, you all have a lot of experience in this industry and great resumes. But how is AB able to handle all these things that it's trying to implement and accomplish at the same time?
Thank you. This is a really good conversation, and I would tell you, starting out, the reason that we're able to accomplish as much as we're doing is it starts with really good people. When you look at the swath of members that we have on the team, we have experts from a variety of experiences and backgrounds coming to this, bringing not only that experience but additional capabilities and mindset to the effort. From the perspective of trying to organize all those different lanes, I tried to put it into 4 or 5 buckets. Number one, we're having a good understanding what ways we want to implement, determining the how behind the what, doing a good assessment of the means, taking a strong look at the organizational capabilities we have inherent to the AB, and then looking outward for additional capabilities that we may need to bring into the fight. Keeping the ends always in front, trying to synchronize between time, space, and the objectives that the chairman has put forth to us. And then all along that path, considering the various risks to accomplishing these within that time and space, that all comes under the umbrella of synchronization. So again, looking at this from the beginning to end, we're focusing with the end state in mind. At the end of the day, the plans and the actions and the activities we have are all leveraged to achieve the goals we specified in our charter for the AB, and also what we've qualified in our bylaws for the deliverables that we have to produce. We're making sure across the teams that we stay integrated and coordinated. And through the communications committee that Mark leads, we are working to strengthen communications across the board, both from the committee aspect and the working groups. Given the readiness at that time and place to move forward, we're taking a very detailed look at the various activities we need from a resource-based perspective. We started, as Ty alluded earlier, the 21st of January. And we started with 15, well, actually about 90-something people, coalition of willing, going down to 15 people. We're resource constrained in that regard, but we're delivering a lot of things within that resource constrained environment. And with the building of the business aspect, we're going to expand that out. And everything we're going to do is go from a resource informed perspective. We're framing our activities with a clear understanding of the changes that are happening in the external environment, because as we know, we're talking about cyber and the adversary gets a vote. So we're constantly keeping in mind how the threat landscape is changing, how tactic techniques and procedures are changing, technologies that are coming out, and bringing those into that conversation. And at the end of the day, we're making informed decisions based off the best products and services that are available, not only in the marketplace, but then seeing how we can bring those into the various swim lanes for the 7 committees that we have to push that forward. I think at the end of the day, the big piece that helps us stay in sync is that we're remaining, again, with our core tenets of collaboration, clarity, and communication. We're remaining active, adaptive, and flexible as the entire AB team. We're staying networked with each other. We're staying collaborative, and we're maintaining that collaboration across the 7 committees. And now with the additional alignment of building a business, enabling and engaging the DoD conversation, and then building out that overall criteria, we're able to push those agenda items forward. The last thing I want to say is that this whole effort is predicated on having a set of ethics and a mindset of conflict of interest mitigation. Because again, each one of us comes from various different business backgrounds. So we've nested within not only the bylaws, but for each of the board members, a set of ethics and compliance. So we remain righteous up front as we're delivering these capabilities. All that gets synchronized together to push out the objectives that the chairman has laid out.
Carlton, that's great. Really appreciate it. And I'm going to move on to Nicole really quickly. So Nicole, can you hear me okay, by the way? I'm not sure she can. So if David, if you could try to get Nicole to associate her phone with the audio, or Nicole, if you want to turn on your microphone from your computer, that would work as well.
I rejoined through the computer.
Oh, good.
Can you hear me now?
The technical issues. Yes, I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay.
And everyone, appreciate your patience. We were supposed to do this in studio, or we were supposed to do this in person, then we moved to in studio, and there wasn't quite enough social distancing there, so we're on the fly. We did this over webcast, so I appreciate everyone's patience. Carlton really described very well how this is a really multifaceted effort, and I think that builds upon what Ty and Mark were talking about. How is the AB going to kind of ensure that the parties, the DoD, the AB, the community, are working constructively together to kind of get to all the places that we all want to get to?
Yeah, so I mean, I really think that comes back to Ty's point when he said how we need to now operationalize the relationship with the DoD. So, while we've been all, waiting to formalize the relationship, there's been lots of conversations going back and forth, lots of planning, lots of strategic thinking happening. But it's really kind of time to get like tactical and formalize all that. So, some of the things that we're doing is we're setting up, regular and recurring meetings with DoD, between DoD and between the various committees and working groups that we've set up within the AB. We're going to be working to collaborate on an integrated master schedule between two of us, because we really want to make sure that both what we're doing from the AB standpoint and the piece and parts that DoD owns, that we're in lockstep and barrel, hand in hand together, moving this out. We don't want to go left if they're going right, and vice versa. So there's going to be a lot more discussion, a lot more collaboration actually happening between the groups, but at a much more tactical level than has been occurring to date. So really looking forward to getting those started, actually making this happen, because it's really amazing what Katie Arrington and the Department of Defense have been able to do, pushing the CMMC out in the expeditious manner that they did. Moving something that fast through a government bureaucracy is generally much more difficult, and they've really overcome some hurdles to make this happen. And we want to support them in every way, shape, and form that we can, so we can secure the DoD supply chain and make this safer for everybody in the ways that we work today.
Great. Nicole, just to follow up really quickly, there's a lot that the board is trying to do at one time. I know Ty talked about the MOU being signed, which is a great accomplishment for all of you. Can you just speak to just briefly kind of the other things that the board is trying to do, find office space and just stand up an organization, hire people, where that process is?
Yeah, so Ty mentioned like our three strategic objectives, operationalize the relationship with the DoD. We have to build the business. So, I mean, we are in the process of finding a home. We actually need a home to sit and to work out of. So where is that going to be? So we've been looking at areas in the, Maryland and Virginia area to set up home there. We're working on what it's going to look like to actually have our own CMMC AB infrastructure, getting us fully up and operationalized like a regular company or independent organization would be. And then we also have our third strategic. We have to, define, develop, and actually implement the CMMC standards. So everything that has to be put in place right now, and this is really where that, operationalize the relationship with DoD, is making sure that we have everything in place. We're meeting the timelines that they need. We can actually oversee the accreditation, certification, the approval, the training, the assessment processes that actually have to occur to make this happen. And part of that is, the ability to maintain and keep the CMMC standard current, again, working with DoD on that, because as we all know, the threat changes over time, and this model and our processes that we work with DoD are going to have to be able to adjust to accommodate the ever-changing threat environment that, DoD contractors and the DoD themselves face.
Great, thank you. Ty, Nicole mentioned timeline, and I think that's kind of something important to talk about. Definitely, the DoD and Katie Arrington has really set forth a very aggressive timeline. Do you anticipate the board being able to kind of meet the aggressive timelines that that DoD has set out?
Right now, that's sure our aim point, and that's part of why we need to make sure that we, do the things that Nicole just outlined. That integrated, detailed schedule down at a tactical level will really give us, I think, a well-informed vision of how we get there from here. We don't anticipate at this juncture, any issues associated with that. That's not to say it's going to be easy, but again, leveraging all of the collaboration, teamwork, input from industry, we have a lot to work with at this juncture. So our current view is that there's no reason why we should not be able to, unless something shows itself to the contrary. Our position is we're going to find a way to make it happen.
Great. And I know critical, as you all talked about, to making it happen. Mark, I'm going to come to you now. Is that are these working groups? And we did get a question, and I think you mentioned it, but let's just reemphasize it. How do folks volunteer for these working groups? Where do they go to do that?
Sorry, I needed to demute there. To go to the working groups, just go to our website, and there's a quick application form on there for security. Basically, after you fill out some things at the bottom of the page and you select the working groups that you're interested in, it will pop up a message saying, if you're already in our database, there's a button to click, and it'll send you an email, which will give you a direct link to update your profile. Fill out whatever fields you see in there. We've been adding fields as we're gathering more information. And down at the bottom, you'll see the different working groups, and just put a check mark and submit. And we will get back to you generally from the time that we announce a working group till the time the group begins its work. We'll get back to you with some acknowledgement of whether you're going to be a part of the working group or not. If you are not in a working group, and this is really important, we still want to hear from you. So when the working group finishes its work, those people that signed up will get an email with a outline form, bullet list of the deliverables and the conclusions of that working group. We're going to survey you at that point and ask, what did you think? Had you been there, would you have had a different opinion? Do you like what we did? Is there a way that we can tweak it to make it better? You'll get that survey, and so whether you're participating in all of the meetings of the working group or coming in at the end and helping us validate the results, either way, we want to hear from you.
That's great. If somebody has a technical problem with the website with submitting something like that, is there an email address they could reach out to kind of help clear that up?
We do not have a webmaster address, but for right now, use news@cmmcab.org. That's news@cmmcab.org. And that's a shared mailbox. And as we're developing this infrastructure and resources, we'll make sure that any problems get addressed.
Great. Carlton, I'm going to come back to you just for a minute here. I know the board has done a lot of outreach. If folks, what kind of further outreach do you anticipate the board having over the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, excellent question. And this is part of our strategic communication strategy. Over the next few months, you're going to see a variety of board members in a variety of forums just like this. And as a quick shout out to you guys, thanks a lot for continuing to shepherd this particular event through. With COVID-19 ongoing, a lot of things are shutting down, but cyber and the activities that are happening in cyberspace are still ongoing. So forcing this conversation to move forward through looking at virtual means was outstanding. So a call out to you guys. So along those lines, part of that plan is every single board member is going to have an opportunity to get out, and you're going to see us in a variety of events to include this. We've had people speaking at organizations like AIA, the Aerospace Industries Association, NDIA, and others. Also through our communications website, that's where our latest and greatest information on what's going on is going to be pushed forward. So we're applying the basic, tell them what you are going to tell them, and then follow through to make sure that they heard and understood your message, because the story that the CMMC AB has got to tell is a very important one. And we want to make sure that not only you hear what we have to say, but as Mark pointed out, we want to hear your inputs as well. So we're coming to a station near you. Over.
That's great. I love it. Nicole, I'm going to go off script just a little bit, but I think it's something that is right in your wheelhouse, just based on the positions you've had in the industry and now at the board. Do you see this cybersecurity threat, or the cyber threat that's out there in general, kind of abating a little bit, or is this kind of a growing storm that we're just starting to kind of meet a little bit more with CMMC?
So the cyber storm has continued to grow as the years have progressed. It has not abated, and it's still not abating. I mean, unfortunately for organizations, they have to be right all the time, but the bad guy only has to be right once. So, what that means is if you don't have the right practices, procedures, and standards in place that you're operating under for an organization, one small error is all it takes for the bad guy to get in, and that's what we continually see over and over and over again. And if you look at the way the CMMC is characterized, it's really taking the best hygiene practices that exist out there in the level 3 and below, which is where most organizations will be, along with the appropriate processes to ensure the right maturity of those hygiene practices to help organizations get to a part that they are more rapidly defending and preventing the threats from even happening or entering their network. Because that's been one of the biggest challenges that I think organizations face today is you may be doing it, but it's not done in a mature manner. And this is really going to drive organizations to get to that maturity level that we need to see to actually be able to support what's happening out there from a cyber perspective.
Definitely critical. So very helpful to hear. We have just a minute or two left, and Ty, I would like to come back to you to kind of finish up here. One of the concerns I've heard from contractors is the cost of this. What can you tell contractors about, I know there's not a dollar figure about how much this is going to cost right now, but what is the board kind of doing to help ensure, and I know there's a lack of control over some of the costs because you're not the one doing the assessments, but what is the board doing to kind of help contractors kind of think about the cost and how they can account for that?
Well, I think the first thing is to just appreciate and believe that cost is certainly one of the principal elements in the forefront of our mind as we look to implement this CMMC standard. So we're exploring an innovative ecosystem. There's a lot out there to leverage. Looking at automation, we're looking at new ways of thinking about it and approaching the problem set to make sure that we make it as cost effective and as expensive as possible. That's not to say that we're going to compromise ensuring that it's effective, but we're pulling out all stops to again try to make sure that we provide tools out there that make it the cost, the juice worth the squeeze, if you will, in terms of what it costs organizations and leveraging all of the great work that's already been out there.
Great. Carlton, Ty, Mark, Nicole, really appreciate your time and your efforts here. And I know the community really appreciates everything that you're doing and your openness to taking feedback and working with the community as a whole. So just really terrific, and look forward to hopefully doing future things like this with you all. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Dave Gardy in the studio.
Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate it. That was a great panel, and we were able to get, by using some of the phone lines, a lot of ingenuity there to try to do the phone with the computer. You guys did fairly well. So thank you again, all of you, for a great panel on CMMC AB, which is a big topic. That's it for our webcast today. We want to thank our sponsors, Neosystems, DHD, CyberClan, Holland & Knight, Security University, for putting out, and they were featured during the program. This will be archived up for on-demand webcasting viewing in about approximately 24 to 48 hours. We may take a little longer to try to edit out and may try to record some of the parts where the Zoom conference problems occurred due to the congestion on the East Coast Zoom network. Apologize for that, but kind of out of our control. But it was a great webcast, and we look forward to seeing you again on Cybersecurity TV. Thanks for joining us.